Hey, what's up, guys? Note Investor here. It is time for another live stream updates, markets, action. We'll look at Bitcoin. We'll look at the other charts, of course. Are the altcoins finally, maybe, hitting a low? That's the big question right now. And of course, we will look at a few news items. Crypto, Bitcoin has been in the news lately. We have Trump tweeting it. Fed Chairman Powell talking about it, Mark Cuban talking about Facebook's Libra. You have all kinds of good stuff. So we'll cover the news very briefly, but just want to hit a few items, kind of just share my opinion on some of those things. And of course, spend plenty of time looking at these charts. So thanks for being here, guys. It's been a while. I took a little bit of a break, went on vacation last week here in the US. It was 4th of July. Pretty much took that week off and then came back over the weekend, and a little bit of a slow start, just kind of taking it easy right now. The market, of course, except for today, the volatility continues. We were up. We went from 11K back to 13, back down to 10, 9, back up to 11. So where do we go from here? What are some things to consider, some things to look at? And then, of course, we will make time for some other charts. And so let's take a look at this. So thanks for being here. Looks like we have some Node insiders here in the house. Thanks for being here, guys. As always, let's kick off the weekend and get things going here. So let's look at the BTC chart, and then I will hop over to the new stuff, and then we'll go from there. So looking at the price action in Bitcoin, always got to start with the higher time frames, right? So in this case, I'm looking at the daily chart, and just technically speaking, looking at the big picture, it's still in a broader uptrend, but no doubts after the big parabolic push, close to that 14K. It's been in a very choppy consolidation since then, and a big percentage move too, right? If you saw the top there, right, from peak to peak, wick to wick, if you want to call it that, it was basically a 30% pullback, followed by a quick spike up 24%, followed by another drop down 10%, followed by another spike up another 22%, and then here in the last couple of days, down 15, 20, 17%. So it's been very wide, very volatile, very choppy, but in the big picture, right, the uptrend is still very much in place. Going to the weekly chart, clearly still very much in an uptrend ever since that April breakout. We've seen this uptrend remain in place. And there's a couple of things that I always look at in terms of just technical indicators that will help you, define whether or not the uptrend's in place. Of course, by definition, an uptrend is technically just higher low and higher highs, which we're seeing, but we could begin to see a little bit of a change in the trend here. And I'll go over 3 different scenarios that I may consider, right, in terms of Bitcoin price action that we could be seeing here, but broader uptrend still very much in place. Looking at the moving averages, right, the 10 EMA, it's still above the 22 EMA on the daily chart. Price remains above both, continues to close above both on the daily charts. There's been some wicks below. You saw some big wicks down here yesterday, a test below. So there certainly has been some downside testing, but the broader uptrend, it's still very much in place. The last time we saw any kind of challenge to the broader uptrend was back in here when we saw that attempt over 9K followed by a pretty good reversal down to 7,500, which ultimately that was support, and then we got going again. So that was really the last time we saw a real big test of the trend here. We could be seeing some of that again. So that's just kind of the heads up. Technically still an uptrend. I am cautious here a little bit over the last couple of days. Took a long and then went flat here, once it failed to clear that 13K again. Told the folks in the Slack group that I was flat again here around, 12.5 or so is when it started to roll over. Went flat, and that turned out to be a pretty good decision because it pretty much just continued. The volatility continued to downside, culminating in a low yesterday right above 10,900, and here we are bouncing back. In the near term, this 11.7, 11.8 zone has really been that first resistance level to be watching. And so today, tomorrow, kind of going into the weekend, that's going to be the level to be watching here in the near term. Is can it break above? It looks like it's trying to find a little bit of a reversal here. You got a low, the quick low followed by volume, starting to make higher lows here. So price is really starting to wedge here into that 11K. There's also a little bit of a divergence showing up here. If we pull up the RSI and the MACD indicators, you can see there's some bullish divergence And so as price has continued lowered here over the last few days, this is the 1 hour chart, mind you, so very granular look. There's certainly some divergence signifying a potential bounce, which we've seen, but certainly no upside confirmation. Price remains below that 60 RSI level on the 1 hour time frame. So, short-term view, kind of just very choppy action here the last few days, potentially finding a little bit of a low. But let's go back to that daily chart because I want to highlight a couple of different scenarios that I've been talking about, some things that I'm just going to keep an eye on here. The first one was a double top, right? That was kind of the most obvious. We had that run up to that 13.8, 13.9 level, followed by a pretty good pullback. Then we saw a bounce right into that and couldn't hold above this prior resistance, basically couldn't stay above 13K on a daily basis. And now we're seeing this pull over. And so I did share a chart with the group here. I do have it on my ideas here. Let's see if I could pop that over. And I had posted the double top scenario here. And basically what I was posting in the Slack group was, we'll see a pullback to around that 10.9, a bounce that fails to clear, 10.7, 10.8, and then finally breaks below 10.6, 10.7, dips down to the 9s, bounce into the neckline, and then hits that ultimate double top target around 8,400. And so that was just the scenario. I'm going to just kind of keep this until it plays out one way or the other. So we'll see how that one marches through. So that's really the first scenario, right? Is this turns out to be a double top. You get a pullback, a rally, doesn't hold, finally breaks the neckline, undercuts it, bounces, and so forth. That's traditionally how the double tops play out. And so as far as support goes, a daily close below $10,600 is going to really signify that potential break and a double top scenario playing out. A close below this would put it below the key moving averages. At that point, the 10 EMA would start to roll over below the 22 EMA. That would be the first time that has happened since before the breakout way back here in February. And so the 10 EMA crossing below the 22 EMA on the daily basis would be a significant change in trend and would be the first time in a long time that we saw that play out. So if price continues to pull to the downside, that's what we'll see. So that's one scenario, right? And in that case, you can do a measured move. You can do a couple different ways in projecting the downside. If it does break to the downside, one way is a measured move. And you just basically extrapolate the peak of the double top. I always go with the shorter top to be a little bit more conservative. In that case, that projects down to the 8Ks. You will have some support below that, above that point, excuse me. And that's going to be around that, whoops, wrong one. That's going to be around that 83, 8,400 level, and that will be your first level of support. So that's kind of really the target for me on the double top scenario if we see that, right? That's always the big if. And that's the thing with technical analysis that I always want to stress is you look at scenarios, right? Technical analysis is about making predictions, making if-then scenarios on different areas, but the actual trade execution, that just all depends on the price action and what ends up playing out, right? So I always like to kind of just go through the exercise of, hey, what if this happens? What if that happens? But at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to stake my entire trading account on any one scenario. Certainly there's some scenarios that are higher probability than others and all that good stuff. And, it's a game of probabilities. But at the end of the day, as I always like to say, take it one day at a time because every day just reveals a little bit more data, a new data point to consider, and just kind of the broader picture. So, and of course, it just depends on your strategy too, right? If you're day trading, totally different strategy. Maybe zooming in on lower time frames. Swing trading, maybe looking at the daily 4-hour charts more. If you're long-term hold, you probably don't care about any of this stuff until the weekly chart really starts to take a turn. So it just kind of depends on your strategy. So I'm just talking daily chart here, bigger picture for now. So that's one scenario, that double top, right, playing out. The other one is a potential cup and handle, right? You have that dip 30%, that rise back up. Traditionally, a cup and handle, the right side of the cup, the lip, if you will, is lower than the first side of the cup, right? So you have that prior strong run up, you have the pullback, generally 30, 35% deep. In this case, it was 30%. So that hits the marks. And then you have a run up, which makes a little bit lower high generally. And then you have a pullback. And of course, the cup and handle can always turn into a double top. And that's one scenario here. But in the case of the cup and handle, you want the handle to be no more than 50% the depth of the cup, right? So you don't want it to start forming below the second half of the lower half of the cup, right? So technically it's still there. That could certainly be a scenario here. And you're getting, that handle forming high above the 22 EMA. So if this is the handle, then that's something to keep an eye on. The reason I don't think it's a cup and handle, because you have high volume and you had low volume on the way up to the right side. Generally, it's the other way around, right? When the price is running back up to the highs, you want volume to expand, and then when it pulls back, you want volume to contract and be lower than that run up. You're not getting that here. In fact, you're getting the opposite. You had very light volume on the way up from that 11K bounce to 13, and then here near the highs, a lot of selling volume kicked in and started to pull back. So a little bit of a red flag in terms of the cup and handle scenario. So that's scenario number 2. And lastly, scenario number 3 is we just kind of do this sideways consolidation after that strong run up, just kind of digest this move. Maybe you form a little bit of a symmetrical pattern, a wedge, however you want to call it. But maybe that's the third scenario where you kind of get one of these guys starting to form and you get some sort of wedge that culminates in a breakout, towards the end of July, early August timeframe, which that's going to be the question, right? Which way does it break out? Of course, if this plays out, this is a continuation pattern, which means generally you get a breakout to the upside, and that's generally the way those work. So in that scenario, you can tighten up the lines here a little bit. You can use the daily close if you wanted to play a little bit tight, not play the wicks. And in that case, you're getting really close to a breakout if you use the daily candle closes. I tend to give these a little bit more room. And, the thing with trend lines, they can be a little bit more subjective. And technically, by definition, you don't need trend lines for a symmetrical pattern, because what you're looking at is what are the swing highs and what are the swing lows. And those are your breakout points, right? And so if this ends up being a swing low, you don't technically have a breakout until you break out above that prior swing high. So a close above 12.7 here would do it on the daily chart. So that's just 3 different scenarios. There's certainly more possibilities, of course, but those are kind of the 3 biggie that are on my radar that I'm watching here. If I had to guess, I would say it's either that symmetrical pattern, sideways consolidation, breakout, or the double top playing out here. And so those are really the 2 that I'm looking at. And I'm leaning more in favor of a double top, just because the weekly chart, it's still a little extended. The RSI is still way up here near 80, and you're getting this pullback on the MACD, certainly still above the 10 EMA, but you have this big shooting star this morning, this reversal that formed here at the highs, and until price gets above that, it's still a valid reversal candle. Certainly volume was well above average on that spike, and you technically would get confirmation on the close below that. We had a chance last week to close below it, but the bulls saved the day. And so we're still in this range, right, on the weekly chart. And until we break out on a closing basis one way or the other, it could go either way, but I'm leaning, more downside consolidation from that scenario. So those are my thoughts on the BTC. Let's go look at some news items, and then we'll deep dive a little bit more in some of the alts. Take a quick swig of this juice, and then I'll look at a few other alts here. So, of course, first off, let's start with the real Donald Trump, tweeting yesterday about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Most of you have already seen and heard of the news, but got to mention it here today. This was kind of his first real tweet on Bitcoin and crypto. Finally broke his silence on it. Of course, as is typical with politicians and legislatures and blah, 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 anytime they start talking Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, the first other word that comes out of their mouth is unlawful behavior, illegal activity, drug trade, money laundering, blah, 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 because that's the only reason cryptocurrencies are ever used. And so it was kind of interesting. But, he said, I'm not a fan of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. But really, the reason he was tweeting this was really just to bash Facebook and to prop up the dollar. He said, similarly, Facebook's Libra, virtual currency, he just started going on and on about that and just kind of using that to say, the U.S. currency, strong dollar, all that good stuff. And so that was really the intent of the tweet, right? It was like, yeah, I mentioned Bitcoin, but it was mostly let's bash Facebook, prop the U.S. dollar. But, that certainly made some news, made the rounds. And then along the same lines, Fed chairman here in the U.S. had the Senate Banking Committee this week for 2 days, sat in front of Congress and Senate and just talked, finance, monetary policy, and all that stuff. And of course, the issue of Facebook's Libra was mentioned, and of course, that led to talk about Bitcoin. And his thoughts were basically, it's a speculative store of value, which is a really good way to sum it up. It is a speculative store of value. He says almost no one uses Bitcoin for payments, and I would say that's probably true. I mean, it's a much bigger trading community than it is a payment community, and it's more of an alternative to gold. But just the fact that the federal, the Federal Reserve Chairman of the United States, meaning the reserve currency of the world, the group leader of that is basically saying, hey, Bitcoin's kind of like gold. And so that was a big win, just kind of philosophically for Bitcoin. It used to be not that long ago where it was just kind of one of those things that you mentioned Bitcoin and they would laugh, right? People on CNBC would mention Bitcoin and they would get these chuckles and, and all that good stuff, right? And so we saw last year or 2 years ago when Janet Yellen had the Buy Bitcoin sign behind her and all that stuff. So it's really become a major topic now in the world of finance and banking and openly, right? And of course, the whole concept of Facebook's Libra stablecoin, I think that has people like the Fed and other banks a little bit more worried, governments more worried than Bitcoin, mostly because Facebook's reach is so far and wide. It's not a true decentralized cryptocurrency. It's just going to be another stablecoin. And let's be honest, these governments and the U.S. Fed included, the IMF, all them, ultimately will issue their own currency in a race to become, the global currency, the one world currency. And so Facebook Libra is just kind of a threat to that. Will it ever happen? Who knows? Of course, they're calling for let's pause, let's regulate, let's investigate, blah, blah, blah. And let's see what else. More talk on Libra. Who cares? We won't talk that anymore. And, I always see Iran in the news, and I know there's sanctions and all that stuff, but I'm constantly seeing these like articles about Iran's banning Bitcoin and Iran's going to allow mining now. It's like, no offense if you're Iranian. I don't have anything against Iranian people, but like, seriously, who cares about what Iran thinks about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? And why does it make the news so much? It's like, who cares about what Iran thinks about Bitcoin? Just my thoughts on that. All right, let's go back to the charts here. And before we get going, of course, some thoughts here. If you want to join the alerts system here, get access to my video training courses. If all the stuff I'm talking about, charts and moving averages and MACDs and strategies, all of that is kind of new to you, I would highly recommend that you check out some of these courses here. You can certainly buy them separately at nodeinvestor.com. You get, lifetime access to the course. It's a one-time payment. But if you are a subscriber to the Node Insiders, as a bonus, you get access to these course videos as long as you're a subscriber. So just something to make note of. We'll take a look at some of the alerts as we get going, and let's get back to it here. So it's mad that Facebook too is 2 billion users, 40 billion BTC, no doubt. Can't ignore it anymore. All right, so we talked Bitcoin enough. I think we'll look at some of the altcoins because that's kind of the big question, right? If you look at some of the altcoins, especially the charts versus Bitcoin, just trashed here over the last couple of months. Here in the last few days, seeing a little bit of green on the board here, and you're seeing on the Twitter sphere and on other channels, a little bit of an altcoin capitulation this week. People are saying that's it, it's over, they're done, they're never coming back, they're going down to infinitum. And I'm just not that school of thought. I think eventually there will be a pretty decent altcoin rally, a pretty good bounce. When it happens is just a matter of guessing for anybody, but we could be getting close to that. Some of these are just crazy oversold, and I think you'll see some pretty good rallies, right? And the nice thing about altcoin rallies, especially versus Bitcoin, is they happen fast and furious, right? We get all excited about, a Bitcoin chart moving up 20%, 30%, but it's not uncommon to see that, on a daily basis in the altcoin rallies when things really get going. So, that's kind of what people enjoy here in the crypto trading space. I mean, certainly Bitcoin has its moments, but, when you get those altcoin moves, it really makes these other moves look small in comparison. So let's get to some of the charts here. I'm going to quickly go through some of the altcoin charts that are moving here today. Big picture, of course, looking at names like Cardano, down 70% since the April highs, just getting trashed. But if you go to the 4-hour view, starting to see another attempt, right? This is all it is. It's another attempt at maybe putting in a low. And we've seen many of these, right? You've seen these big spikes. You've seen another rally here, another rally here. And here we are seeing another potential attempt at putting in a low. What I am noticing, though, is, you're getting a little bit of divergence here. Let me go to the daily chart real quick. On some of these, not all of these, right? Some of these are really bad. There's Cardano. Here's ETH, right? You've got a little divergence here on ETH where price is still making new lows, but the RSI and the MACD are not confirming with new lows. And so again, it's an early sign, something to just pay attention to. There is certainly nothing in the way of confirmation yet in terms of names, reversals that are happening, right? There's a few names that are strong right now. Of course, Link is strong. Raven was strong today. Lumens was popping off the lows. There's always a handful of names, but across the space, nothing really yet saying, hey, a low has been put in, right? What we want to see is something like this, where you get a pretty big pop off the low, good volume, a higher low formed, and then a new relative higher high. And then you'll start to see a trend develop and some more momentum kick into the space, right? Until then, right now, most of these quick moves off the lows are a little bit suspect. Right now, for example, ETH, even though it has a bullish divergence on the daily chart, this is technically a little bit of a bear pennant on the way down. So just something to make note of there. If it breaks lower, it's going to lose support again very quickly here versus Bitcoin. And that could culminate with the Bitcoin move to the upside, right? Some other names here, Link, of course, strong relatively here versus BTC. Link USD, very strong. I think it was up something like 16% here today. Let's go to Link USD here. And that's on Coinbase, but you get the idea here. Pretty good move off the swing low here. You had a little double bottom form there, up 25% since then. So definitely, some names out there, but across the board, just not happening yet, right? And that's the big thing, is it yet, right? Will it ever happen again? I think so. I don't think alts are like dead per se. Will they ever come back and go to the all-time highs versus Bitcoin? I don't think so, right? Not all of them, certainly not all of them. Some of them might, some of them will, but will we get that moon that takes them back to these prior highs? Probably not, especially not for a lot of the names that most people have now realized are probably just crap coins. They were just pumping on crazy speculation. So yes, we've already been saying that for a long time, right? Most of these alts will not survive. We've already known that. 90% of them are crap anyway. We've known that, right? Doesn't mean you can't trade them. Doesn't mean that some of these won't really turn into big winners. But I don't think the crypto community is just blindly chasing every little pump, rumor, and announcement of an announcement and partnership deals like they used to, right? People are a lot smarter now. Many people have been burned, and they kind of just have felt the pain over the last 2 years of downward alt trends. So looking at some of these here, what are some of the other ones on the list here today? Let's go to, I'm going to start with the big names here. I'm going to just deep dive a few of these. Looking at ETH, I'm going to go ETH BTC here, not dollar. ETH BTC here. And so, of course, we talked this potential divergence showing up here, but this is breaking a big, support level. Let me go to the ETH BTC on Coinbase. And I mentioned this here a few weeks back that, here we go. I already have the line on the chart. ETH versus Bitcoin on a weekly basis. This is the long time chart here. It's basically back to the strong support level that was a significant level back to 2016. And you had that spike low here. Here you had multiple levels of support. And if you zoom in here a little bit and just look at the most recent months here, we're basically breaking support now, right? You had that low that was back in December of 2018. You had a spike low here in the summer of 18. And then here most recently in May of this year. And on a closing basis, if this weekly candle closes where it closes now, and there's only a couple days left, that's going to be a break of support on this near-term resist support here. And, you're basically heading down to the next level around 2,100 on the BTC pair. So from that perspective, ETH looks pretty rough here versus Bitcoin. I mean, it's just, there's no turning the corner yet. And even though they have some developments coming on the project and potentially staking and all that other stuff, just hasn't been a material impact to the overall price of the ETH tokens. Is it still ICOs dumping? Is it still people getting out of ETH buying Bitcoin? I mean, it could be. You've seen some pretty positive developments in ETH. You saw Grayscale launch their trust and you have other people buying it, but all around versus Bitcoin, still losing some ground here. If we look at it from the ETH USD side here, not quite as bad, of course, being pumped up by the price of BTC, but it is starting to trend lower here. You had this high, and you had to pull back right to support. That was looking positive. Looked like you wanted to get going again, and then here just making a little bit of a lower high. So I'm watching it here. I was watching it yesterday for a potential reversal. If I zoom into the 4-hour view here, I shared this with the group yesterday saying, keep an eye on that 277 level. A little pop from here could make for a quick upside trade. And really, I'm just looking for a little bit of a trade, right? Nothing like a kickoff to something new. If it gets that good, but I'm just looking for close to 300, and if it gets past that, then close to the prior highs around 315. So a little bit of an upside trade there, and of course your stop would be pretty tight. Just this swing low here, so around 268, 267. Makes for a favorable risk reward ratio if you look at it from that perspective. If that's your swing low, first target gets you about just under 2.1 R, and then here it gets you well over 3 R multiple. So something I'm watching here. Litecoin. Looking at Litecoin USD here. Another one, small trade I took here over the last few days. This was when BTC was just dropping. LTC was just getting hammered. Had already come off that 140 top and was breaking the $100 mark. And once it started to get a little bit climactic here, I entered a position. It's up slightly, but hasn't quite been the bounce I was looking for. I was looking for a little bit stronger of a bounce that would quickly get it back to 110 or 114. We haven't quite seen that yet. The trade's in the green, but it's not a stellar trade that's going to just really be a quick big winner. It's only up about, what is this here, maybe 5% at the moment, so nothing to write home about when it comes to alts trading. So that's LTC. Of course, from the BTC side, looking at it here on Binance, just still trending lower, looking pretty ugly, pretty weak here, breaking support from end of June here in the last few days, still living below these key moving averages. Again, saw a little bit of a bounce versus Bitcoin. I was hoping it would have outperformed Bitcoin on the way up with the bounce. It still could. It's just kind of edging out here, but until it gets above that 22 EMA around 9,200, got to be very cautious here on all of these because they're still trending lower. The dominant trend is still very much to the downside on all of these here. Link, looking at Link, of course, Link BTC has been a big winner here in recent weeks. Had a pretty good pullback, a little bit double top, finally pulling back. And here in the last few days here, this is the 4-hour view, little double bottom forming right there. Today here, just in the last couple hours, breaking above that neckline, confirming you're getting a little bit of a pullback here. So these are the type of secondary entries that I like to look for. I don't like to chase the big green candles, as you guys know, but looking at the pullback here, if I were to trade this, I would look at either a pullback to the line or to the moving average, and then keep a pretty tight stop. Basically the low of that impulse candle, that big breakout candle, I wouldn't let it get much below that. If it violates that, for me, it was a failed breakout, and I just want to get out of the way. On the way up here, a couple of levels to look at. There aren't very many here. First big one is just that prior resistance up here. It's about 22% move to the upside, but I want to see a close above this prior neckline. This could just be a bounce into the neckline, right, that you're seeing right now. So something to make note of. When you see that big breakdown, it's not uncommon to see a retest of that breakdown point and then downside continuation after that. So if it just doesn't get back above that on a closing basis, then I'm not going to count this as a breakout reversal here. So just something to make note of. What I'm looking at is, this could just be a bounce before the next break to the downside. And in that case, you're looking at support right around here, which is what, 20, basically 22 or so. So just, it's kind of a little bit of a middle ground here, but on a shorter term basis, I think it's probably good for a little quick scalp to the upside here if this pullback holds. But Link has been pretty good here, strong, especially on the USD side. Looks like it's reversing. Good volume on the way up too. All right, let's see here. I'm going to read some of the comments here, just kind of catching up a little bit here. I've been rambling for some time. Let's see here. We got some other node insiders in the house. Thanks for being here, guys and gals. Let's see here. Reading some of these comments here. All right, we'll take a look. Let me see what else I have on my list here. I'll take a look at Raven, Lumens, EOS, Monaro, and then we will jump to any names you guys want to lurk at here. Welcome to Team Node. All right. Yeah, let's look at BNB, Quant, QNT, XRP. All right. Cool. Let's see here. Let me go to the alerts real quick, see what else is kind of popping, anything hitting the radar. We saw some moves earlier, Lumens yesterday, VeChain. All right, little pop on VeChain. Raven already on my list. Some smaller cap names, which I will skip. What's on the top BMI watch list here? We have Lumens, BAT. I saw your comment on BAT. I will add that one. I'll skip Komodo, Decred, Steamback Dollars, Cyber Miles. I'm going to skip most of these smaller cap names right now. All right, let's go from there. Let's go from there and see what we get. All right, so I'm going to start with the kind of standard when I look at these, mostly looking at BTC pairs. What I'm going to do is start with the daily charts, get a feel for the broader trend. As we know, most of them are going to be pretty rough looking, and then I'll dial it in pretty good, maybe 4-hour, 1-hour charts, and see if, you know, where the nearest support resistance levels are, if there's any potential setups forming. And that's just kind of my thought process when I'm scanning the charts and looking at that. And then, you know, if I'm actually looking to make a trade, I'll generally will narrow it down to a handful that I like the most, put some alerts in place, maybe even set some orders if there's, you know, there's something happening. I don't have anything against KMD. I just, the lower volume names, I just tend to pass up. You know, if we have time, I'll certainly look at some of those. But just the lower volume names, there certainly could be tradable, absolutely. But you know, like CMT, for example, you know, I've traded this one sometime, you know, plenty of times in the past. Just tends to be very volatile, lower volume, a little bit more illiquid names. So just that's my thoughts, right? Nothing wrong with Komodo here if you like to trade it. All right, let me go to the other parts of the list. So looking at Raven. Yeah, let's take a look at some of those other ones like Stellar and Matic and Harmony and stuff. I'll put those on the list here. Matic was popping off the lows here. All right. All right, so looking at Raven here. Came on the radar here earlier today. I saw it pop across the alerts here as it popped off the low with pretty good volume here, and the volume was significant. That's what I like to see when you see something like that off the lows. You want to see some big volume, and you want to see it hold, and then the next candle start to really confirm, right? It popped right into some resistance here, so you can see the prior lows. You had a low here, here, here. That was finally the breakdown point that started the little bit of a downtrend that we saw in this 4-hour view, and so it's still below that, right? So let's zoom in here a little bit here. Delete that for you guys. And, you know, it doesn't mean you can't enter on a little bit of a pullback here, but that's going to be your first kind of hurdle that needs to overcome. And then, of course, there's this broader downtrend that you can also look at here. That's also where the price is pausing right now. And so a little bit of a resistance zone here, but if we can start to push and hold above, looks good here on the way down. Don't want to see it get much below this level. If it pulls back, ideally, you want to see it hold above that level on any type of pullbacks. And so if I'm looking to make a pullback entry, you know, these little dips into this area are where I would look to put some bids here. So if I zoom in, you know, you look at some of these pullback areas, that first line, 10 EMA would start to approach that. That second line is 22 EMA on the 1-hour view. And so if I wanted to make some dips, these are where I would look at it here for some potential dip entries. And then what I would do is I would basically keep my stop either just below that impulse candle low, at the most a swing low, but that's probably way too low for me. So I'd do something like, let's say I got it here. I'd do something like this if I was trading it. And then, you know, your first target's not quite 2R multiple, so you certainly want to see it break above. Then above that, you're looking at first resistance here. But you know, that could be a quick 20% to the upside on a dip entry down to this level with about a 7% stop loss. So almost a 3R multiple in that scenario. That's a trade I would take all day long if I can get closer to 3R multiple. But the thing with these are not necessarily high probability trades because they're reversal trades, right? You're getting these pops off the lows. There's not a a trend that's in your favor. You're kind of going against the grain here. So generally those reversal trades, I like to just, they're almost scalps in many ways, right? You get the quick pops to the upside, and I generally will take some profits right into resistance, let some ride a little bit and go from there. So, that's the thing with all of these. They're all going to be pretty much reversal trades just because the broader trend is still to the downside. So just something to make note of there. All right. I'll take a look at Litecoin again. We did a quick look at it earlier. I'll certainly come back to some of these here. Hello from Holland. All right. So that's Raven. I mean, again, big downtrend in the big picture. Certainly bearish daily chart, bearish weekly chart, all-time lows here, I believe. But, here seeing a pretty good pop off the lows here today. So we'll see if it can show some follow through to the upside here. Let's go to the next one here. Stellar Lumens. Long time popular name here to look at. It was just getting crushed here too the last few days. Seen some good volume come in here. I mean, look at the big picture, right? Just to set the tone. I mean, it's not pretty. It is just not pretty versus BTC here. And a lot of the discussion lately has been, names, these payment names, right? Are they going to be threatened now if Libra goes online? And I think so, just because Facebook just has broader reach in terms of marketability and partnerships and all that stuff. And, their white paper already suggested many of the names are going to be partnering with. And if some of these projects, and I know things like Stellar were transitioning into platform smart contract projects, but essentially they were born as payment instruments, right? XRP or Stellar and some of these others, and all of them can't win, obviously. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out in the next year as things start to come online here. But in the near term, are they tradable? Absolutely. And so what I'm watching here is this reversal potentially taking place here. You saw it pop here on XLM off the lows. Pretty good volume, big volume wick here to the top, but it's still holding up. A little bit of a flag forming right there in that zone. So what I would like to see is, this little, maybe a quick dip to the low to the moving averages or a breakout. The level I'd be watching on the upside is around 860 on the BTC pair, 860 Satoshi. It's going to put you right there. And so moving above that, which shows some continuation from that low, then your next target is going to be around that 929 area on the BTC pair. And then from there, just kind of the next major resistance level. So, this would be your next target on the upside. And then this is kind of a big target here. I'd see a lot of resistance at that point here. So those are the levels to be watching on the upside. And let's see here. It's right at the 10 EMA on the daily chart. That's where the pause happens, surprisingly. And then, the next target is going to be kind of no man's land here. So on the daily chart, 22 EMA around 975 would be a pretty good target on the bounce. But look at the daily chart, just, nothing to write home about. It's tough. It's tough to find alts that are not wrecked versus Bitcoin here. But some of these, if they start to reverse versus BTC here on the USD side, they are setting out. Let's go back to XLM, for example, here. How does it look on the USD side? It's not a bad reversal off of a support level. You got a little bit of a support level here from May, and saw a bounce off of that. I mean, that's all it is at this point, is a bounce. But again, this could turn into potential reversal bounce. And at that point on the USD pair, then you're looking at up here as your next target. And so how far is that? That's, maybe another 15, 20% on the upside, right? So, 15, 20% is not a bad trade if you take it. All right. Hello from Portugal. And yes, smash that like button. I'll put BCH on the list. Haven't looked at that one in quite some time. All right, here. Sorry, I'm just catching up on some of these comments, my friends. Stellar Lumens. All right. Who else was moving today here? Monaro was moving a little bit. Tiny bit. Nothing. This one's interesting here. So this is the Monaro BTC daily chart. It's kind of been chopping around here for a while, testing this support level. This is the third test of the downside, higher low technically, and maybe setting up here. I'd like to see a lot more volume, though. Look at that. Just really weak volume so far on this daily chart. But if you get a big volume pop here, that'd be interesting. The first level is very clear. I mean, these last two daily highs that needs to hold on the upside. If it can clear and close above that, that would signify a potential reversal there on the Monaro chart. But you're going to have, like most of these, you're going to have a lot of hurdles on the way up. I mean, you got this next level here, and then of course getting back above this would be a big win here. But that's a long ways up here, one day at a time, right? That's sheesh. That's like not even let's talk about it level up. That's too far up. But yeah, we'll see how this one goes. It is kind of finding a little bit of a low potential triple bottom there. Very choppy, but let's dial it in here a little bit. Go on that 4-hour view. See how this one looks here. It is rounding out a little bit of a corner here, so we'll see. I mean, if I wanted to jump on this here, this would basically be the place to look at it. And, pretty tight stop right around there. It's about a 6% stop. And I would trade it basically up to this, here, in case it double topped around there. It's about a 13% upside to 1R. That's pretty good. And of course, if it breaks out, so then that's my next target into that level. That'd be about a 25, 26% move to the upside. So interesting. How's it look on the USD side? Monero dollar. Similar pattern here. Looks like $85 is that new support level to be watching. All right, let's go. I'm going to try to move along quickly here. Don't want to keep you guys waiting too long. EOS, man, EOS getting smacked. EOS BTC getting the smackdown here. Just surprisingly, honestly, I mean, I thought they'd be a little bit of a pullback after their little June announcement, sell the news scenario. But dang, look at that. Since June, just whack. How far down is that? So that's a pretty good push to the downside since that June high. It's down about basically 60%. It's not bad. 60%. 60% in 2 weeks versus Bitcoin. 3 weeks. That's ouch. That's an ouch. But it's definitely washed out here, a little bit oversold. I'm keeping an eye on this one for an oversold bounce. You're getting a little bit of a divergence on the MACD side, on the RSI side as well. How's it looking here? Yeah, I mean, it's still no sign of a bottom. There's a big red candle here that was high volume, and that turned out to be a low wick. So that's going to be your first test. If it makes a higher low above this on the short time frame, then I'd be watching out for some reversal. So that's really going to be your zone to be watching, the range of that candle right there. So closing above that on the 4-hour chart would really start to negate that. That could also signify some some capitulation, some washout on the very short term. And holding above that would be good. So at that point, I'd be looking for that oversold bounce. And then your target here on the upside is going into, this resistance around 4,900. So it's not a bad error level to be watching here. But dang, smackening, the smackening. Looking at ETH dollar real quick here. Yeesh. A little bit of a bounce, that's all. All right. How's Litecoin dollar looking? Still moving higher. I'm hoping it hits my target so I can just close it out before the weekend and just call it a day. I want to see a little quick spike. I'm going to start to scale out on the way up if it does start to move and just call it a day. BTC. Let's go back to Bitcoin here. Keep an eye on this one. Nice little break to the upside. So on the upside, and if you missed the beginning, I was talking about some different scenarios. We were talking about, is this double top scenario playing out, a potential wedge, maybe even a cup and handle, some things to watch here. The big takeaway on all of those scenarios is if you get a daily candle close above the high of these prior to, in any scenario you look at, that's going to be favorable, right? That would negate the double top. That would be a breakout on the symmetrical wedge pattern. That would also be a breakout on a cup and handle. And so that's, that's the level that I'd be watching there. So that's basically 12,600. Closing above that, this is on the Coinbase, closing above that 12.6 is going to be the level to be watching here. If you look at it from the Binance price, BTC USD, Tether, right, that translates into, no, the same thing, 12.6. So that's the level to be watching. Nice. All right. Let's keep it going. Lambo time. Come on. You guys already know I'm a Ferrari man, not a Lambo guy. All right, let's see. Binance coin. Let's take a look at the BNB. Did another coin burn here recently. Didn't do anything for the price though. But there's some volume coming in here at the lows, but still below the 10 EMA on the daily, still below the 22 EMA. Both of them are trending lower. Any way you look at it, it's ugly. I was talking about this weeks back, saying it was starting to look pretty toppy here, and you're getting that downside confirmation versus Bitcoin just breaking to the downside here. Nothing really to do. We were looking at it actually in the group here, a couple weeks back right there. And I mentioned that to me, it just felt like a bounce, bear flag bounce into resistance. And that's exactly the way it turned out and just really pull into the downside. So versus BTC, there's just nothing here yet. It's just looking pretty ugly. It is pulling into the first level of support, which is here. And then below that, you're kind of looking at a few levels. But for now, patience. Let's see here. QNT. So this is a name that's just really been on a tear here lately. Sorry. Let me go to a different exchange here. So if you look at it on Bittrex, which, man, I haven't traded on Bittrex in a long time, just continues to trend nicely. It's had its pretty wild action here a couple days ago, big wick to the upside. That's pretty bearish, to be honest, especially after a big move to the upside. But, man, just still trending nicely, still holding 10 EMA. Max, I would give it to the downside is the 22 EMA, which is right around, 80 to 60 or so. But if we zoom in here a little bit, this big wick's kind of interesting. I saw that big spike, a lot of sellers showing up here. Maybe hard to see on this live stream here, but that's a big wick there on massive volume, generally signifies some sellers. But if we can start to get back above at least this level, was that 1170? That would be that's kind of the level to be watching on the upside for some more trend continuation. But it's already had a pretty good run. I mean, what's the and that's the thing with these names that are not broadly distributed in terms of exchanges. They do tend to do this. So lower volume. It's already up 336%. So how much more do you want? All right, let's keep it moving. XRP. Oh, do we want to look at this chart? Eesh. For you, XR. Whatever happened to the XRP army? Still out there, guys? But, this, again, just no love for XRP. Just continues to get dumped, making new lows, new relative lows. Every time you see a spike, it just gets sold into. And, the story remains the same. Yes, it's oversold. But, that's the thing with something being oversold after a tremendous downtrend. Other than these quick counter-trend rally spikes catching the bottom, if you're looking longer term, like you don't necessarily want to catch the exact bottom, right? I mean, because you don't know where that could be. It could drop easily another 20, 30, 40% from here, right? And it's just hard to say where that bottom is. It's broken major levels on the way down. It could head all the way down to these lows, right? I mean, it's anyone's guess. At this point, you're just, just going to wait until you see at least some initial signs of reversal, right? This would be a good type of setup to be watching for, right? You get the spike, the pullback, the bullish divergence on the pullback, and then big daily candle that just like undoes the prior 2 weeks or something. That's what you want to see, right? Not these very weak bounce attempts, which we've seen so far. So XRP, no love yet. Their day will come, maybe. Maybe. I don't know, maybe not for XRP. And the thing is, it's like holds such prominence on the Bitcoin market cap, which it really shouldn't, right? It's just a supply thing that makes it so market cap valuable. And the big three, right? XRP, Bitcoin Cash, ETH, of course, Litecoin, EOS, those other names. They, when they fall this much versus BTC, that Bitcoin dominance really just spikes. But if you kind of neutralize some of those names out and just kind of factor in trading volumes and all that stuff, right? They probably wouldn't be up there in top 5 or top 10, right? A lot of those names would be way lower. And that would really change the BTC dominance picture, in my opinion. I mean, it would be higher than it is now. And so just something to note, like Bitcoin is just really that dominant versus the alts. All right, let's see here. Bats. Looking at it on the BTC pair. Daily chart maybe finding a little double bottom here. Let's go to that 4-hour view. Tested some support. There's some pretty good volume came in here right off of that low on the BTC pair. You can see that volume spike right there. It has not cleared that resistance level just yet, but getting above that little zone here, I would be positive and would really start to signify that, at least on the higher time frames, maybe this is ready to start pushing a little higher and test some next levels of resistance versus Bitcoin. So, near term on BAT, I'd be watching this most recent swing low that we saw yesterday or 2 days ago. And then on the near term on the upside, just call it 2,700 BTC, getting above that would start to turn this picture a little bit more positive. BAT. All right. Matic. Yeah, I was watching Matic for the other day on the daily chart thinking maybe this forms a double bottom, but it never really materialized. I was looking at this one here. You saw that first pullback, and then, of course, the rally to the 22 EMA failed right there, started to pull back, and then this candle here was forming a potential doji. Volume was above average, but not that high. It would have been better if it was much higher, but this is what I was watching here, and it still could form, but you want to see the daily candle close above these last 4 days here. And so if you can get a daily candle close above those last 4 days, then I think you're going to get another retest of at least the 22 EMA, but most likely this neckline here. And if it's going to be bearish, what will happen is it'll form a lower high and then roll over and make a new relative low. So near term, what is that? Let's call it 145, 146 is kind of that first resistance level to be watching. And of course, if it breaks this low, then look out below. All right, NEO. Let's take a look at the NEO, because NEO was one of the stronger relative names versus Bitcoin for some time here in the last few weeks. It was holding up very well versus Bitcoin here. You look at NEO BTC since May, pretty much sideways, which means the USD chart was participating in that very strong rally that Bitcoin had. And so we can see that NEO hit, what, 20, 22 bucks or something? Let's go back to it. At the high, $21. And so very strong move off the lows here. Very nice move since May from basically $9 to $22. Finally breaking low. I was watching this one here as a potential bull flag breakout setup, but I didn't do anything with it. I wasn't going to anticipate, and it did break to the downside, holding some support right now. This basically the prior breakout points around, what is that, $14, $15. But it did break some support. Moving averages are rolling over, so I'd be cautious on this guy. Going back to the NEO BTC pair, the level that I was watching on this BTC pair was basically this level. Had struggled to get back above it for some times, multiple attempts. I mean, even going back, back here, that was really the resistance level. And so again, another thing that I was just kind of sit tight until it could finally clear above that. It looked like it wanted to, but I wanted to see some confirmation. Never did. Just kind of rolling over, testing the lows here versus Bitcoin. Just range bound at this point. Still holds right now, but I'm just watching this one. Near term looking bearish, especially on the USD side, breaking support. So just going to sit tight on that guy here. Let's see what else. Matic 1. Harmony. Eesh. Next one. Atom, Cosmos, breaking the lows, hitting new lows here. No love for a lot of these IEOs. A lot of them were just kind of speculative. We know that, right? We all know that they were just speculative pumps. Impressive pumps, no doubt. But once the game was over, it was like on to the next one, and this thing got dumped. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe it's making a higher low right now. I think Seller did the same thing. Seller, it's been a choppy one. Took a few trades on this a while back, but haven't done anything with it. Maybe, again, just like the other one we looked at, maybe a double bottom here, right? Got to see some confirmation. I want to see some volume kick in, too. If it starts to push higher, just like Matic, I want to see some volume kick in there. Oh, Atom isn't. You're right. Atom was on other exchanges. You're right. BCH. Yikes. No love for the Bitcoin Cash, huh? Bitcoin Cash breaking some support here too. Around 32.8. Next, it's kind of in no man's land now. It's kind of in the middle ground here. Next level down is the all-time lows here in December. So, man, Bitcoin Cash. Whatever happened to Bitcoin Cash? Wasn't it going to like take over the world? How's it look on the BCH? The thing I was watching on BCH from the USD side, it needed to close that gap from when they switched out of SV, when they did the fork split, and it kind of just came offline. There was this big gap here. And, clearly that's since been closed. So where do we go from here? Kind of just anyone's guess, but versus BTC, just not looking very hot. This one looks like it's rolling over. All right, I think I've done my list here. I'm looking at it real quick to see what else. Did I miss anything? Cardano, I think we covered that guy. I'm just reading your comments here, my friends. All right, radio silence. Let's see what else we got going on here. Anything else showing up on the list here that we might want to look at? No. We'll look at KMD. I know you guys were asking about that one. And IOTX. Let's really quickly scan some of these, see what they look like. IOTX looks like for the last couple of weeks, finding a little bit of a low here. Can it follow through to the upside? Breaking above, call it 88 sats. Man, small sat name. That's the level I'd be watching here. KMD, there's a name from yesteryear. We look at this one from time to time. Rarely, but, looking at this guy here, I mean, just the long-term picture again, like most of those, but it has been pretty choppy down here. I mean, it did have a pretty good move off the low, maybe making a higher low right now as it tests this level here, still below 22 EMA, but this could be a higher low here. So, yeah, something to watch there. Burst, man, there's a name from yesteryear. Burst on Bittrex. Looks like it had a nice move off the lows, but it basically rallied right to this resistance level right here. See all this trading that took place in here? I mean, that's just going to be tons of resistance, and that's just the way it happens with traders, right? You had a lot of traders taking positions here, potentially, maybe people buying low, looking for another push higher, and then it just gets smacked to the downside, finally bounces. But first, the first group of traders are going to start taking profits into that bounce as it hits that resistance level. It doesn't mean that that's the move, but that's not unusual to see that. Pulling back here a little bit. Burst. What are the market cap on some of these names? Engine. Yeah, Engine. Engine. Oh my goodness. Engine has fully retraced that move, man. Remember when it did that amazing move in February and just completely retracing that move. Wow. Back down to the lows here that it had established here basically all of Q4 of last year. BTC is still going up. Let's go BTT here. Interesting. So I had this chart marked up here for this level here, and watch where this price just found a little bit of a bounce right above that support level. So that's interesting to watch there. See if it can hold. That was really your first level of support. It was support back here. It was the breakout, the highs back here / the breakout point, getting a retest. So looks like it's bouncing there. If it starts to lose that level, though, not going to look too good. So definitely that's the level it must hold. It's trying to bounce right now. Bitcoin Cash SV. Does that still trade on where? Polo? Who else trades it? Does Finex trade it still? Yeah. Still haven't looked at it in forever. Yeah, it's just rolling over too, just like Bitcoin Cash. Right back to this support level here. We'll see if this is going to be the the last little breakout. That was a big impulse bar, a big spike. It's fully retraced that. Wouldn't surprise me to maybe see a little bit of a bounce here, but the longer term trend is just not favorable. Just not looking too good. BTC 12K. Let's go back. Let's go check it out. 12K party again. Could it break 12K? Yeah, I think 12.2 is your real target to be watching. 12.2 right here. So that's kind of the level to be watching on the way up. Will it break 12K? Yeah, maybe. It looks like it has the momentum too. Volume on the upside, though, has been pretty weak, to be honest. But that's okay because it's helping my LTC trade. No, it's not. LTC is losing ground. ETH. Why did I don't know. I just pulled that one up first. I mean, I guess you could look at it in the other pairs. This one doesn't trade very much volume. I know USD Tether trades a lot more volume. That's why I looked at it there. But, I mean, USD coin, that looks weak, choppy. I don't know. No particular reason. I know the Tether pair trades the most volume, so that one made the most sense. When alt season? Man, when 2017 alt season? I don't know. Personally, I don't know if we'll ever see a 2017 style alt season. At least not like where it's across the board. Oh, Tron, yeah, sorry about that. Some of them will, I think, but it's going to be a little bit more judicious now. Things are a little bit different. I think there's a lot more caution out there. You know, there's the whole hype. Certainly some names will see the type of rallies we see, but you know, is it going to be like, I mean, I remember a time where it was just, oh, let's just, whatever hasn't broken out yet, we'll break out next. So it's just a matter of like finding like a base here, just throwing something at it, because eventually it was going to break out, right? You know, that's not necessarily the case anymore. Some of these projects that have already stood the test of time and are like, they may not come back, right? The excitement's past. There's going to certainly be new coins, new projects that are coming on the line, but not like before, right? Before it was just like, man, it seemed like every week just tons of new tokens were coming out and people were just chasing the next best thing. You know, obviously the ICO craze is over, so you know there was just a lot more driving that. Will we see? You know, will the crypto space see a broader macro uptrend again? Probably, yeah, I think so. But it's just going to be a little different every time. No more throwing darts, that's for sure. No more spinning the wheel. So looking at Tron daily, wow. Just really getting smacked here versus BTC here still. Let me go to the Tron USD pair because I've been watching that key level, as you guys know. Let's see how it looks right now. And it looks like it's breaking below that. And so what I was watching on Tron here was this, you know, it had this big breakout above this level, held it on multiple attempts here, and that's really more like this level. And finally getting the smackdown on here. So not looking too hot. We'll see if it can recover. 20K for BTC in 2019. What's the possibility? I think there's a high probability of that. It wouldn't take a whole lot, to be honest with you. I'm not saying we're going to see it, but it's probable. You know, the broader trend is so strong, and there's plenty of time left that. Let me go to the weekly chart. You know, there's plenty of time left to where if we saw the same type of momentum kick in, you could see a quick spike to 20K. It doesn't mean it blasts right through that. And, you know, you hear the Tom Lee numbers of, you know, 50K is imminent. I'm not that bullish. In fact, when I start seeing guys like Tom Lee say 50K is imminent or you know, new all-time highs are imminent, I get a little bit more cautious, right? It's like, okay, now we just quadrupled and now everyone's like, here comes the 50K, the 20K. It's like, okay, let's take it a little easy here. But is it probable? It is. And if you look at, you know, maybe you get some certain area where here's the chop and maybe we get a pullback finally, and then a recovery, right, and then a quick spike into the end of the year, December. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. I think. Is it likely? I would say, I would give it maybe 50, 60% chance that it happens. Eventually, yes, I think 20K is going to happen. The 29, does it happen this year? I don't know. Got the happening coming up here. What's a good cryptocurrency to start with? If you're brand new, obviously you got to start with Bitcoin. And then I tend to start looking at the other big cap names. And if you're not sure, like what you still want to know a little bit about the project, right? If you're just trading, it's okay if you just kind of look at all the other coins, but you want to know about the projects, at least if you're kind of going to be in the crypto space. And so, you just start with the obvious ones, right? You start with ETH and Litecoin and, some of the other platform protocol names, maybe EOS. I just kind of understand them a little bit and look at their charts and all that. So the bigger cap names, they're more liquid, they're more accessible. You can buy them on just about any platform, and that's the place to start if you're new to crypto. You think a new all-time high will happen by the end of summer? It's possible. I mean, it certainly is. It's a little extended here on the weekly chart, which is kind of what gives me a little bit of pause. But, could we see a scenario like this where it was like all of a sudden, bam, 3-4 weeks in a row of just crazy action? Absolutely. And what would trigger that? I mean, who knows? It could be a number of things, right? It could be rumors of a Bitcoin ETF again. It could be some major company promoting it or accepting it, or, who knows, right? There's just so many reasons. And just a move like this is not even that big anymore from a percentage basis. I mean, from the current price to 20K is, okay, it's a lot. It's only 60%. But, we saw that back here where basically in 4 weeks went 200%. So you could see it. You could. I'm not saying you won't. But I'm just not, by end of summer just feels like too soon. Yeah, buy Libra. If you're getting started in crypto, you got to buy Libra. You got to buy Venezuela coin, Iran coin, and IMF coin. And whatever else they make you buy. All right, my friends. Hey, well, I've been on for, what is this, going a little over an hour now. I think we are probably, no, yeah, you got to buy BitConnect too. Don't forget that. If you're brand new, that's probably the first thing you should do is buy BitConnect if you're brand new. As always, read my description in the notes. This is all for education and entertainment. Don't take my advice on anything. But I appreciate you guys being here. As always, it's fun doing the live streams with you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. I always hope you guys learn something. And thanks for all the comments and the likes. We'll see. Oh, Spank Chain and Chain Coin. Dang. I got to reload my wallet on some of these names. Have a great weekend, everyone. Talk to you all next time. Take care.